In a highly competitive corporate department, a soft-spoken, deeply religious administrative assistant named Sarah was universally adored by her colleagues. She was the first to offer help, never raised her voice, and consistently presented herself as a fragile, empathetic soul who simply wanted peace. But behind that gentle, unassuming facade lay a highly calculated predatory campaign of absolute destruction. Over a 2-year period, 3 of the department's top-performing employees were unexpectedly terminated, their professional reputations entirely ruined. They didn't fall because of poor metrics or technical failures inside their computer workspaces. They fell because Sarah had quietly marked them as threats to her social authority. Sarah was a clinically textbook covert narcissist, executing a flawless, hidden smear campaign. This real-world case study exposed a terrifying truth about human manipulation. It proved that the most dangerous predators do not attack with overt aggression or loud boardroom outbursts. Instead, they wear the absolute cloak of the helpless victim, using quiet whispers, targeted sighs, and manufactured tears to weaponize a crowd against an innocent target, completely blinding the room to an execution happening in broad daylight. This profound interpersonal hijack is driven by a psychological mechanism known as covert weaponized altruism, operating through a structure called the martyr complex shield. Unlike the overt narcissist who demands loud admiration, wealth, or immediate public dominance, the covert chameleon derives their psychological supply from being viewed as the most sacrificing, long-suffering individual in the room. Their ego cannot tolerate the internal reality of their own deep-seated insecurity and hollow self-worth. To protect their pride, their subconscious constructs an elaborate identity matrix of absolute innocence. They don't seek to be feared, they seek to be pitied. They treat your professional boundaries, your independence, and your integrity as a direct offense to their manufactured vulnerability. They use their apparent helplessness as a psychological weapon, transforming your ordinary boundaries into acts of cruelty in the eyes of the crowd, completely blinding the environment to their malice simply to secure absolute control over the group's emotional real estate. To see why this passive-aggressive camouflage is so incredibly devastating, we must look at the neurobiology of moral disgust and the social compliance pathways. When modern neuroscientists place individuals who specialize in covert manipulation inside brain scanners and expose them to scenarios involving social competition, they observe an extraordinary neural processing shift. While an ordinary brain registers cooperative tasks through the reward centers of the ventral striatum, the covert narcissistic brain experiences a high surge of activity inside the medial prefrontal cortex, and the mentalizing networks strictly when they successfully engineer a scenario where they are vindicated as an innocent victim while their rival is punished. Their biology pulls the plug on genuine empathy, replacing it with an elite capacity for tactical scanning. They possess a hyper-developed theory of mind, allowing them to logically calculate exactly how to manipulate the moral biases of a crowd, using the natural human instinct to protect the weak as a literal battering ram to destroy their target's reputation, without ever exposing their own hands. When a covert chameleon begins targeting an individual inside a shared environment, the victim's subconscious mind deploys an automated defensive maneuver known as the empathy deficit denial. This is a psychological shield where an ordinary cooperative person observes continuous subtle boundary violations, passive-aggressive barbs, or sudden cold silences from the manipulator, but chooses to treat them as accidental errors or signs of the sender's deep emotional pain. The human ego cannot tolerate the destabilizing reality of recognizing that a seemingly fragile, broken person is actively trying to destroy them. To protect your pride from the terrifying realization that your kindness is being weaponized against you, your mind performs a catastrophic rationalization. It tells a story. Surely they didn't mean to leave me out of that report. Surely they are just highly stressed, or if I show them more warmth and support, they will finally feel secure. Notice how the mind uses your decency as an emotional shield to keep you completely blind to an active smear campaign, leaving your defenses totally lowered. The primary weapon a covert narcissist uses to execute their systemic destruction is a process called micro-insinuation smearing. During her 2-year campaign, Sarah never launched a direct, provable accusation against her targets. She used the casual conversations of her workspace to plant microscopic seeds of doubt. She would sit with the manager, sigh deeply, and whisper, "I am so worried about John. He seems completely overwhelmed lately. I hope his personal life isn't falling apart." This statement is calculated with absolute precision to sound like pure, empathetic concern. The clash between this performative warmth and the reality of the toxic lie creates a slow, toxic distortion inside the manager's brain. When John later makes a routine technical error on his timeline, the manager's mind automatically matches it with Sarah's insinuation, concluding that John is unstable. The predator uses the crowd's selective attention as an emotional shield, turning a department into a hostile environment while choosing the comfort of a silent execution today over the risk of open conflict tomorrow. Alongside micro-insinuations, the covert chameleon utilizes a secondary, highly passive filter known as diagnostic inversion. The moment a target realizes they are being sabotaged and attempts to confront the manipulator with calm data or clear boundaries, the covert narcissist's subconscious instantly executes a complete reversal of the dynamic. Sarah did not defend her actions. She collapsed into immediate tears, claiming that the target's calm boundary was an act of aggressive workplace bullying and intimidation. This filter alters the perception of the entire room because it weaponizes the crowd's maternal and paternal instincts. The selective attention filter of the environment ensures that the crowd highlights the manipulator's tears while completely deleting the hard data points of the original abuse. Diagnostic inversion transforms the corporate or family hierarchy into a blank space where the true victim is publicly branded as the abuser. It allows the predator to participate in collective cruelty under the absolute guise of self-defense, completely shielding their ego from self-reflection while forcing the target into total isolation. These abstract biological filters manifest daily in devastating real-world loops, the most common of which is the trap of the controlled echo chamber. This is the precise reason why an entire social circle or office department can participate in the vicious exclusion of an innocent colleague without a single person speaking up. When a covert narcissist successfully deploys diagnostic inversion, they create an absolute optical illusion of a dangerous outsider. The crowd looks at the manipulator's performative fragility and concludes that the target must be toxic. To avoid the intense anxiety of standing alone against the group's moral consensus, every individual in the environment chooses to match the cold silence. They ignore the target's emails, exclude them from lunch sessions, and stop sharing technical context on their computers. The organization voluntarily surrenders its collective sanity, sliding down a slope of systemic cruelty simply because its members choose to deny the evidence of their own eyes to conform to a frozen crowd, entirely blind to the reality that they are acting as the predator's personal executioners. We see this exact same self-sabotage playing out through the pattern of the reactive outburst trap. When an empathetic individual is subjected to months of silent smear campaigns, subtle sabotage, and public diagnostic inversion, their central nervous system eventually enters a state of absolute unassisted trauma and chronic exhaustion. The predictive tracking engine of their brain snaps under the weight of the injustice. They lose their composure, launching a furious, loud public confrontation against the covert chameleon in the middle of the workspace. This is the exact data point the predator's subconscious has been waiting to extract. The narcissist responds with immediate shock, absolute silence, and calm terror, allowing the entire room to witness the target's chaotic rage. The crowd looks at the eruption, verifies the fabricated narrative that the target is dangerous, and initiates immediate termination or permanent social exclusion. The victim is left completely ruined, entirely blind to the reality that their own biological panic was weaponized by the predator to close the cognitive loop perfectly, sacrificing their career today to secure the narcissist's safety tomorrow. When this collective blindness and weaponized victimhood scales up from an isolated department to a societal level, it produces the highly destructive phenomenon of moral totalitarianism and generational infantilization. A society enters a profound crisis of decay when its primary institutions stop evaluating individuals based on objective merit, logic, or verifiable data, and begin evaluating them solely based on who can present the most convincing performance of fragility and historical offense. Independent critical thought is treated as a literal social crime against the weak. Mass conformity turns a population into a synchronized, unthinking herd that will gladly burn down its own legal frameworks and sacrifice its most productive citizens simply to protect the collective ego from the terrifying vulnerability of objective truth. A civilization does not lose its freedom because it is overrun by external monsters. It slides into tyranny because ordinary citizens choose to view strength as a crime and treat calculated tears as absolute moral authority, violently suppressing any calm voice who dares to point out the mask. The true danger of interacting with a covert chameleon is that it constructs a perfectly closed, self-fulfilling cognitive loop that entirely blinds you to your own loss of personal sovereignty. The cycle begins the moment you accept their performative helplessness and overextend your personal energy to heal or protect them. This high-stress environment creates immediate subconscious pressure to preserve their fragile ego, forcing your brain to reduce activity in its logical and self-protective networks. Because your internal boundaries are lowered by your own decency, you choose compliance, staying silent when they execute a passive-aggressive swipe against a coworker. To clear the immediate wave of internal guilt, your mind instantly deploys empathy deficit denial, rewriting history to convince your conscious ego that they are simply a wounded soul who needs extra patience. This failure to stand for your own independent truth is then used by your predictive processing engine as a new baseline for the future. The loop closes perfectly, strengthening the neural pathways of moral blindness until you are actively helping the predator destroy your own environment. Dismantling this matrix of covert sabotage requires a rare, aggressive practice known as the cold boundary mirror. You cannot defeat a covert chameleon by engaging in emotional arguments, offering more patience, or trying to defend your character to a compromised crowd. Your brain's predictive processing engine demands hard, unyielding data points of absolute emotional detachment to break the spell of their inversion. This reprogramming begins by completely removing your emotional investment from their performance. The next time you find yourself in an environment where a whisper campaign or a diagnostic inversion is launched, do not look to the crowd for validation. Recognize that your intense desire to scream your innocence is your amygdala firing a compliance alarm under the threat of exclusion. Force your conscious mind to override the freeze. Document every technical communication on your desktop workspace. Refuse to speak with a manipulator without a witness or a written trail, and match their performative fragility with an absolute icy wall of professional neutrality. By refusing to offer an emotional reaction, you starve their prediction engine of fuel, forcing them to find another target while you reclaim your mind. Tearing away the cloak of a covert chameleon and choosing your own emotional sanity is an act of supreme psychological heroism because it forces you to face the raw neural pain of group isolation, public visibility, and targeted moral condemnation. Your brain will fight this process at every single turn, desperately screaming at you to defend your name, apologize to keep the peace, and accept the comfortable shared illusions of the herd simply to keep your ego safe in the pack. But now that you know the anatomy of the trap, now that you understand how your subconscious mind uses weaponized altruism, diagnostic inversion, and micro-insinuation to turn you into an unthinking echo, the cloak has lost its lock over your consciousness. You can choose to step out of the delusion and view your social circles with absolute, unyielding clarity. This navigation of your subconscious architecture is a lifelong education, and your brain utilizes of other invisible neural mechanisms every single day to dictate your choices and trap you on autopilot without your consent. If you're ready to shatter the rest of these hidden mental loops, discover how your mind fakes reality, and unlock the true mechanisms of your subconscious, click on the playlist appearing on your screen right now. We have built an entire archive of long-form case studies and psychological deep dives designed explicitly to help you look past the self-delusions of your ego. Click through, explore the library, and take absolute control of your psychology.